righty, hey, welcome football fans. It's time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. Of course, it's an Inside Sports production. We're up to week number 13. All kinds of good stuff going on in the NFL. And anybody hear what happened to Richie Incognito? Yeah, neither did I. But what happened to Mike Tomlin? What's happening all around the league? Let's go ahead and start breaking it down here. Of course, I don't do this by myself. I only enlist the best. If you watch my shows, any of these shows, you know that I don't have any slacking off around here. So I got the best man available, none other than Chris Lardieri. Follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. Read him online, chrislsports.blogspot.com. Your entertainment is guaranteed. So without further ado, Mr. Lardieri, what's happening?
Charles, every week when I think that was a great introduction, it just gets better and better. I appreciate it. You do a far better job than the NFL referees, that much I will say.
Yeah, at least I do know what down it is, man. And we're coming down. Yeah, we're coming down the stretch here. Just a few games left. Lots of teams fighting for playoff position. But first, what's going on in the world of Mr. Lardieri?
I enjoyed the games this past weekend. I was hoping the Vikings would tie, so they'd have not only two ties in a season, but 2 consecutive week ties. But thanks to Robbie Gould, that wasn't the case. I'm still not quite sure why Tressman kicked on second down, but at this point, does anyone really care? I'm kind of glad, you hit on something I was thinking about on Sunday. The whole Richie Incognito thing has gotten swept under the rug even more, and I'm sure you could send a Christmas card to Mike Tomlin and some of these referees. It's good to know that it's just everything comes full circle. When all else fails, we'll always have the refs to be a talking point during the week. So I'm glad Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito have left the collective minds of NFL fans, and we're now focusing on the zebras.
Yeah, that's true. And there was that was really a what can you call that? I mean, just a mighty faux pas there on the Sunday night football game with the Redskins. Just terrible.
Just a slight one. I was watching the game with my wife, and my first reaction when the play happened was, that looks short. And then even she said to me, like, what down is it? And, just a casual viewer sitting at home 3,000 miles away from the game saw it. And like we talked about in pre-production, I thought Al Michaels was going to go ballistic. And then I realized he must have been worried he wasn't going to cover. I'm not sure which side of the bed he had that night. I'd have to go back and figure it out. But, man, he was ready to jump out of the booth at the refs, and then rightfully so.
Yeah, that's true. And then, well, we got to back because, we had a bunch of good Thanksgiving Day games as well, which, the the Lions started out a little bit shaky, and then they got things together against the Packers and went ahead and dusted them. The Ravens taking care of the Steelers, and then, again, getting off to a shaky start was Dallas, but finally taking care of business against the Raiders. But, the Steelers game and the whole thing with Mike Tomlin, and it comes down from the NFL now. Tomlin's going to get fined $100,000, and then I guess they are pondering some type of penalty with draft picks as well for the Steelers as an organization.
Yeah, they're really going to crack down on this. Apparently, the NFL sent out a memo the day before that game last week saying something in effect that your coaches need to be off the sidelines, period. And I guess the immortal words of Bill Lumberg in Office Space, he didn't get the memo. And, I think out of trivia time here, can you tell me the last person who had a little sideline incident? It was against your Dolphins. He was a coach with the Jets. Can you do that?
Oh, but he was just a special teams coach, Sal Alosi, who is now coaching out at UCLA.
Very good. I'm very impressed. Mike Tomlin will always have a home in Westwood if the Steelers ever get rid of him. But, yeah, they should start the Sal Alosi rule, right?
Well, but that was different because he actually stuck a knee out at the gunner on that kickoff. So
Tomlin learned. He wasn't so. He was a little more, shall we say, I don't know, confused or oblivious. He just happened to wander on the field. He wasn't going to stick his leg out because he knew they'd catch him for that. And to his credit, he didn't get a penalty.
Yeah, that's true. So the referees just kind of had a tough weekend, but. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and transition here. But a few, like when we look at the impressive performances this weekend, How about Seattle and just dusting the New Orleans Saints on Monday night? Incredible.
Yeah, I know we both picked the Seahawks, but I didn't think it was going to be that much of a blowout to the point where at halftime, 24-7 and into the early stages of the third quarter, you could have turned your TV set off. They just on all facets. I mean, Russell Wilson looks like a superstar in the making if he's not heading that way already. The Seattle defense is all over the place. Clearly, this didn't affect the secondary because Drew Brees was having fits all night. And, that vaunted home field advantage, it looks like the Seahawks are going to at least run the table, or if they do have a few slip-ups, they're going to be in the driver's seat for home field throughout. So all roads to the Meadowlands will go through the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that's true. And, they're really, really taking care of business there. And in fact, it's almost difficult with them having home field advantage. You'd almost say that barring some horrible rash of injuries, I mean, they can almost punch the ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I thought the Saints going into the season were a contender. They're not going to go back up there in January and win unless something really catastrophic happens to the Seahawks. And even the 49ers have really come on of late. They're going to have to go up there, and Colin Kaepernick doesn't have much luck. So, I think there's no foregone conclusion. We saw it last year with the Broncos, but all signs are pointing that way.
Yeah. So, let's talk about a few teams. We just talked about the season when it started and teams with high hopes and things. So, we haven't done an Are They Toast segment in a while here. So, let's just talk about a few of them. 6 teams that I've picked out. The Green Bay Packers, the New York Giants, Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers, Dallas Cowboys, and the San Diego Chargers. So let's just talk about them a little bit. Let's start with the Green Bay Packers. Would you say they are toast?
I'm gonna lean towards the side of toast. I think that even if Aaron Rodgers does come back, it doesn't sound like he's 100% physically.
Right.
He could be one hit away from getting hurt even worse, and there's talk of maybe just shutting him down for the season. Matt Flynn's not going to get the job done, and it's really a shame because the Packers look like they were going to be in the driver's seat to at least contend for that division, if not win. And all the wheels fell off as soon as Rodgers went out.
Yeah, that's true. And then what about any hope for your Giants?
No, I mean, even if they run the table here, they've got to win a game against Seattle at home, which is possible. You never know. Seattle doesn't always travel east well. Then they go on the road to Detroit and then host the Redskins at home, and that's never a gimme. Even on Sunday, the Redskins played a poor game, and they're in the game throughout. So even if they do that, they're going to need help from Philadelphia and or Dallas, and I don't see that happening. If they end up in a tie with Dallas, they lose a tiebreaker because they got swept, so they're toast.
Alrighty, and then let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Another team has high hopes, but injuries at the quarterback position, a few other injuries as well, but the main thing was Cutler going out.
Yeah, I think they still have a shot. We know the Lions. There was the team that showed up on Thanksgiving Day, and then there's the one that lost the previous Sunday to Tampa. And Josh McCown's done a nice job in a backup role relieving Jay Cutler. He likes spreading the ball around. He clearly has picked up Trestman's offense, and I think there's still hope for them.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's go ahead over and we'll talk about, when you talk about Thanksgiving Day, what about the Steelers? They lost that big game to the Ravens, but mathematically, really just a game out of the wild card pack. What do you think about Steeltown boys?
As scary as it sounds, I don't think they're done yet. Now we'll see how they rebound after a tough loss to the Ravens and all the media firestorm over Tomlin. There's a little sideline dance, but when you consider the Tennessee Titans are still in it, you gotta think that the Steelers are better than the Titans, even though Titans beat them in Week 1. So I think there's still a flickering glimmer of hope in the Steeltown.
All right, and that's one thing when you look at losing to the Titans. So it's not even just the record, but when you look at a lot of the teams that started out with these poor starts, like the Steelers, like the Giants, it's The problem is they can't win any tiebreakers. I mean, bad division records, head-to-head competitions, things like that. They lose on a lot of those tiebreakers. That's what's going to make it tough for teams like Pittsburgh to get in there.
Yeah, you never know. You think back a few years ago when Rex Ryan went into a press conference after losing to Atlanta and started talking as if the season was over, and next thing you know, they get in as a 9-7 wild card. So stranger things can happen.
And I believe they wound up beating the Colts that year.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
They sure did. So, yeah, you never know. Just don't let Rex do the math for you.
Okay, and here's one, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Jerry Jones, calling out Tony Romo for basically no reason this past week, saying that he needs to be a better leader and finisher and whatever else. But the Cowboys really kind of in a precarious position here because, of course, they reach 500. Everybody starts talking Super Bowl. And, can Romo get it done? But when I look at the Cowboys, honestly, with certain teams coming on, and I mean like the, you got New Orleans, you got Carolina, you got the Arizona Cardinals, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that the Cowboys are going to wind up being the odd man out here.
They very well could, and we all know how Romo struggles in December and the typical fold that happens. But I'm not going to consider them toast. I think at the very least they're going to be in until the final week when they play a likely Sunday night deciding game against the Eagles at home, so they've got a very real chance to get in. That said, I think if they do get in, they're one and done. So in some respect they're toast regardless, but by no means do I think they're going to be on the outside looking in. They've still got a fighter's chance, and the last I checked, Jerry Jones, Romo doesn't play defense, and it's a costly fumble on the opening kickoff and letting Matt McGloin look like a legit NFL quarterback for a couple quarters. Not Tony's fault.
All righty, and then what about the Chargers, the San Diego occasionally Superchargers, led by Phillip Rivers? Do we close the book on them? Are they toast, or do you want to hold off on the butter and jam for just one more week?
I'm gonna hold off, although my gut tells me they're toast. Similarly to with the Steelers, if they can get on a roll here, they could get in. I mean, they're gonna have to go to Denver. That's one tough game, but they beat the Giants. They got a couple more home games. KC, I believe, could be very interesting. They might sneak in this mediocre wild card race that is the AFC. So, as much as I'd like to, I will not close the toaster oven on the Chargers.
All righty. So, and let's
never mind the division, and his job has been on the line with a new GM down there in Charlotte. Everyone thought he was a goner, dead man walking proverbially, and look what he's done. I mean, they're a win away if they beat New Orleans on Sunday, being in the driver's seat and potentially having a bye in the NFC. So if you ask me, it's been a great job. Cam Newton came off that sophomore slump and has really rebounded, and they've retooled their defense. And we know Rivera's a defensive specialist to begin with, a defensive coordinator, and done a great job previously. So I think for me, he's got to be the favorite right now.
And then, well, what about Pete Carroll though? With everything that's gone on there with Seattle, or is it because of as strong a team as Seattle had to begin with? Does he kind of take a back seat to a guy like Ron Rivera?
Yeah, I think so, and that's not to demean Carroll's accomplishments this season, but this is a team that, if you ask me, should have beaten Atlanta in the playoffs last year and been playing for an NFC title game against the 49ers. So the talent was there, the groundwork was laid. The fact that they are just chugging along with one loss is really great. But, in some ways, when you're great on a curve like this, he gets punished for having a fully stocked returning playoff team.
That's true. And then what about Bruce Arians out there in the desert, bringing hope and belief to the Cardinals, even though they lost a tough game in Philly this past weekend. But still, they played well in that game. A few mistakes aside, but they're playing some solid football there in Arizona.
Yeah, definitely. I think he can be a dark horse candidate. They're not going to win that division, but if they get in a division as tough as that with the 49ers and the Seahawks, he definitely deserves some consideration, because that's another team no one was really high on. Everyone thought the Carson Palmer trade was a mistake, and they've got one of the most underrated defenses in the NFL, and he's taking his offensive wizardry to the desert and turn things around. So if they get in, watch out for him. He could sneak some votes.
Yep, could break some hearts. And what about Big Red, Andy Reid? Things started off well enough, but now the ship is taking on a little bit of water.
Yeah, I think he was the favorite a few weeks ago, but now getting swept by Denver, they'll probably get in as a wild card. It'll be a nice story, but I think what a lot of the NFL world has seen is this is a team that had tragedy last year and got off to a rough start and could never get the ball rolling. The cupboard was not left bare for Andy Reid when he got there, so there was a lot of talent on that team. They traded for Alex Smith, which was a key move, but definitely in consideration, but I don't think he's the ultimate winner in the NFL this year. Great turnaround job, but almost a case of like Pete Carroll, where the tools were in place and there weren't as many questions as some of these other teams like Arizona and Carolina.
All right. Well, be interesting as we watch that come down the stretch. And I'd say it's up for grabs. I think really it would be between those four guys. Would you say maybe if the Eagles were to run the table, does Chip Kelly make a late run, or do you think the early season kind of killed him?
No, I think people have short memories, and you look at in other sports, a lot of times guys that win coach or manager of the year, teams that rallied down the stretch to get in, and if the Eagles sneak in coming out of nowhere to win this division, I think Kelly gets serious consideration. After the first few weeks where everyone had written off his style and thought he was a college coach and it wouldn't work in the NFL, he's proven the critics wrong, so keep your eye on him coming down the stretch around the turn.
Yep, and I think, for my money, though, I would have to say, and especially given their history of really not having any winning tradition, even though they did go to that Super Bowl some years back, 10 years ago, with Jake Delhomme at quarterback. But I think it's got to go to Ron Rivera, barring some incredible belly-up type situation from Cam Newton and the Panthers.
Definitely. And, regardless, I don't think Rex Ryan will be in the discussion at any point in the next month, do you?
I don't think so. And we can talk about Rex Ryan a little bit here, but man, Geno Smith. And now from what I understand, I think Geno Smith is going to start again this week, even after that. He looked like a scared child against the Dolphins last week. That's the best way to describe it. Yeah,
pretty much. There was no Richie Incognito to bully him, so there's no excuse. I think his quarterback rating was something like 8 for the 2 quarters he played, which I think is unheard of. He's completely confused. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in a month and a half. And Rex sticks by him, which is ironic because you look back at Sanchez and Tebow and that whole debacle last year. This year he's consistent. He's going to stand by his man. But brings an interesting point. I mean, at what point, I know politically and media-wise it will create yet another firestorm, but could Tebow do a better job with the Jets? I say he could. I mean, he can at least, doesn't have a great arm. We know he can't throw, but can anyone get worse than Geno Smith? Not that the Jets would bring him back, but if this were Tebow, everyone would be going crazy. It's almost like it's kind of forgotten that Geno Smith stinks and that's it. But this is a terrible job of epic proportions by a rookie quarterback, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Now, and one other thing with Rex Ryan in New York. Now, if you were the head coach and your choices for quarterback are Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, or Matt Sims, how much pressure should there really be on you to, who do you really put in? If it's not Geno Smith, is it going to be Sims?
Yeah, and I mean, at what point, and I think they coaxed David Garrard back out of retirement, didn't
right.
they? And I think he's a more viable option than either of those two. But yeah, I think it's a question of Rex knows with a new GM, he's likely a lame duck coach this year. So politically for him, it's probably good to say, well, this is my GM's quarterback. Let's see if we're going to sink or swim with them. And if not, we'll have to start over again next year if I'm back.
And by the way, did you know that Josh Freeman was still a member of the Minnesota Vikings? Were you aware of that? Or
I wasn't, because he wasn't even holding a clipboard. I think he's been, deactive for the last 3 weeks. I mean, I want a job like that where you get paid $2 million to not even set foot on the field. That's great work if you can get it.
Yeah, and he had the one start where he was horrible, and then you just never even heard from him again. It's as though he just disappeared into thin air, but he's still on the roster. But I think he's 8th on the quarterback depth chart. I think they have 2 cornerbacks and a linebacker who would start at quarterback before Josh Freeman would.
Yeah, I think Sean Salisbury and Tommy Kramer would come out of retirement and be higher on the depth chart.
Alrighty, so just about time to get into into our picks segment here. So everyone loves the picks of the week, but anything to say before we get into that? Yeah,
it just kind of flew under the radar. I noticed it on Thanksgiving. Since we're talking about referees, I heard Jerry Seaman, who was one of the ubiquitous faces on NFL games in the 80s, one of the top officials, did a number of Super Bowls, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Was kind of the standard bearer for his era with Jerry Markbright, who used to like to not call a lot of holding penalties against the Cowboys when I'd see them play the Giants in the Meadowlands. But I digress. He passed away, and today was his funeral, so I think we mentioned the former owners and players who passed away. We should probably mention him because he was actually a good referee. So, rest in peace. And maybe the NFL will try and recruit a few more like him. I know that I'm not. This is not to say that all referees are bad, but I mean, when Bruce Arians is producing a videotape with multiple instances of blown calls to the league, you're not doing too well.
Yeah, that's true. And what can you say about the Zebras? And the one thing is, it's kind of a thankless job because, as most of the referees will tell you, they know they've done a good job or done the perfect game when nobody is saying anything about the officials after the game. That's basically it. Nobody says anything good or bad. Just there's zero feedback. You know that you did a good job.
Yeah, no news is good news. And something else that people talk about a lot that may need to be broached again. These referees, it's not their only job. A lot of these guys are professionals and work the games on the weekends or Monday nights, and they're the only sport that doesn't have full-time referees. So we may see that come again, and they'll say, well, the NFL really only has 17 weeks, and then a month of the postseason for the best refs, and what are these guys going to do all off-season? Well, there are a lot of intricacies with the rules and things like that, and maybe they need to bone up on these and study it more or review their work throughout the year. But the game's changing, the rules are getting more complex, it's moving faster, and maybe we do need full-time referees.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily full-time, but I just think that there's certain mandates that come down from the NFL, and one of them, which is my pet peeve, is the whole pass interference thing. You can't even breathe on a receiver now without getting a flag. And they were talking about it on one of the networks about how now every receiver, whenever he doesn't catch the ball, he gets up and begs for a flag.
Yep, it's getting like soccer, taking a dive, and at the same time, when there's a closely defended play, I saw one in the Broncos-Chiefs game Sunday, you'd expect the flag to be thrown. And Phil Simms even said at one point, I believe, that was actually a good play. And, I agree with you. It's like you can't even lay a hand on a guy's shoulder pad to try and make a play. It's not like you're jumping over his shoulder, but you lay a hand on a receiver, now that flag's going to come flying.
Right, but then you look at all the hand fighting that receivers do and how often is offensive pass interference called. They let that go all the time.
You're allowed to push off if you're a receiver. That's about it.
Ever since Drew Pearson did it to Nate Wright in the playoff game against the Vikings.
That was a Hail Mary, Charles. He did not push off.
Yeah. Okay. So moving right along, the picks of the week. Last week I managed to go 3-3. You went 4-2 last week. So you still got your 10-game lead on me. I'm 32-40-45 for the season. You're sitting at 42-35, a very respectable mark. But let's go ahead and break them down now this week. And we'll start a big game where you had one of the owners again who loves to take to Twitter, Mr. Jim Irsay, saying he didn't spend all these millions of dollars for this. Here's Indianapolis Colts in Cincinnati to take on the ever helter-skelter but pretty good Cincinnati Bengals. How would you see this one?
You know, the Colts really did not impress me against what I consider a weak Tennessee team last week. If it weren't for our good friend Adam Vinatieri and his field goals, they don't win that game. The offense, again, continues to struggle, and they're lucky the anemic Titan offense and put up more points on them. And I think the Bengals here see that the Ravens are going to be breathing down their neck. The Steelers aren't going to go away easily, and they win this game at home. They're going to put some space between them and the contenders chasing them. So I'm going with the Bengals at home. They had a nice defensive effort last week. Dalton struggled until late in the game, but I think they get the ball rolling again.
Yeah, and you know, I had written about that Indianapolis Colts win. I said that was a win that only Marty Schottenheimer will really appreciate. It's like a touchdown and 5 field goals. That's just he probably dreamt about things like that. But yeah. Indianapolis needs to get things going, and you know, maybe the whole I don't know, with the whole Trent Richardson thing. I don't know how that's really affected the team. It seemed okay at first. Now when you look at the last 3 weeks or so, but anyways, I'm going to take the team with less turmoil here. I got the Cincinnati Bengals as well. So let's go ahead and move on to another one. This will be a big game. Detroit Lions at Philadelphia. Detroit, of course, they had the 2 losses in a row. They right the ship on Thanksgiving. Philadelphia, though, coming off a big test. Nick Foles still has not thrown an interception. 19 TD passes, 0 interceptions. I think I'll pick this one in Philadelphia, with Philadelphia rolling and with what they need to do with that division versus Detroit, they just need to not screw up to win their division. Pressure's on Philadelphia. I think they need this game. They got to win this game. Got to have it. They're playing at home. I like the Eagles over the Detroit Lions.
This will be the first portion of the picks where we'll disagree. I'm going with the Lions. I think they turned things around, albeit against a weak Packers team. I think something they discovered is a 2-headed monster at running back with Reggie Bush and Joik Bell. I think they're just going to pound the ball away, and if Eagles try and key on it, Mr. Megatron Calvin Johnson's going to start getting the ball. I think this could potentially be a shootout. I don't see much defense on either side of the ball, but I'll take my chances with the Detroit offense against the Eagles defense. I think that's a mismatch right there, and probably a close game and one of the better games of the week, and I'm going Detroit.
All right, and well, the other thing to look at, a point to what you said is Nick Foles, and will that defensive front of the Lions be able to get good pressure on him? Because, if Dominican Sue and those boys can get some pressure on Nick Foles, maybe they can get him a little bit rattled. But I like Philadelphia to come through in this game.
One of us will win.
All right, so the New York Giants, your New York Giants in San Diego to play the Chargers. Eli played pretty well this past week, but, that's both 2 helter-skelter teams. How do you see this one?
Yeah, the Chargers are so up and down, as are the Giants. I'm actually going to go with San Diego in this one. Like we hit on earlier, they're still mathematically alive. They got a fighter's chance to sneak a wild card spot. They tend to not win games they should, and vice versa. Eli will come back, and I know it's been almost 10 years now, to San Diego, where he will get resoundingly booed, and he hasn't played well there in the past. And for some strange reason, I could see Phillip Rivers having a great game in a game that the Chargers really need, and the Giants well, technically they're still in it. I don't think they need it as much. Even though they won Sunday, they really didn't show me a heck of a lot, and I think the Chargers are better than the Redskins, even though Washington beat them earlier this year. So I'll go San Diego in a game that'll probably be seen by about 30,000 people.
All right. I think, well, will there be magic between Rivers and Ajira Tutu at the end again this season? That's the real question. So I like Eli. Eli he's kind of streaky that way. I think if they played a decent game this past weekend, I like the Giants to win this game in San Diego. So the Giants, the Giants do have a championship pedigree still. And even though they got off to the horrible start, they're playing better football overall the last month. So I'm going to go with the Giants to kind of stay on that roll that they're on and get that win in San Diego.
Naturally, I hope you're right from a personal perspective, but as a prognosticator, I guess I can't root for you.
Okay, and now battle of athletic quarterbacks and really good, great teams contending in the NFC. Seattle Seahawks in San Francisco to play the Niners, so of course they're not going to have that big 12th man edge that they do get in Seattle. But two of the great mobile quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, two great defenses as well. In fact, the teams are mirror images. What can you say? Seattle and San Francisco. How do you like this one?
I'm going to go with Seattle, and normally I would pick the 49ers, but while they've gotten on a nice little roll here, I'm just not that impressed with Kaepernick, and I know how Pete Carroll and the Seahawks defense likes to give him fits. That combined with the fact that Seattle's going to want to put their arch rivals down once and for all and lock up this division. I'm picking the Seahawks, and I guess what would normally be considered a semi-upset, but best team in football. Going down there to the Bay Area, I think they put it together. I know last year when they played in San Francisco, it turned into a snooze fest. I think it was something like 13-9 on a Thursday night. I don't see that now. I think Russell Wilson is really having a phenomenal year, and I could see him at least throwing a few touchdowns on that San Francisco defense, which has been playing better. But I just think this is a team on a mission that's clicking on all cylinders and hard to stop.
Well, I would agree they're on a mission. Still, though, playing at home, and I thought Seattle is a different team. Even though they've only lost once this year, but it's a whole different game when they're playing in Seattle versus playing away from Seattle. So I'm going to go with the Niners. The Niners have been looking to get things right. Kaepernick got off to the odd start this year, not playing well and then playing well in spurts. But I think here we go down the stretch, 4 games to play in the season. I think the intensity gets ramped up. I think it's going to be a great game, for one thing. I'll say that up front. But I think that when the smoke clears, we're going to see the Niners victorious on their home field.
I like it. You know what, Charles? You're either going to make up for me this week or I'm going to pull away. I like these kind of weeks.
Okay, and then Carolina Panthers, we talked about them, whether they won, I think, 8 games in a row now. Carolina going to New Orleans. New Orleans just got spanked on Monday night, but as we all know, New Orleans is a whole different team when they're playing at home in the Superdome. But Carolina going into New Orleans, I'll go ahead and pick this one first here. Despite the home field advantage, I still got to go with, Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers on too much of a roll. And, the Saints have proven they can get overwhelmed from time to time. And I think Newton and the Panthers are going to be too much for the Saints, even in New Orleans. I'm going with the Panthers.
We will disagree again. Had the Saints put up a better fight and not gotten embarrassed on Monday Night Football, I may have been apt to pick the Panthers. I think their defense is great, and Newton's been playing really well this season. But when you get a ticked-off Drew Brees and Sean Payton, I'd say watch out. I think they've got a home field advantage like only the Seahawks have in the league, and I think they rebound this week and win. Now, that said, watch out for a couple weeks when they go back to Charlotte. If the Saints win, that's no gimme. They've traditionally struggled up there from time to time, so that's going to be an interesting rematch. Keep your eye out for.
Okay, Drew Brees is too short. Anyways, moving right along. And we talked about 2 teams in our Toast segment, Dallas Cowboys Chicago Bears. Dallas Cowboys will be in Chicago, and by the way, if the weather is a factor, there's, from what I understand, no snow expected in Chicago, but it'll probably be below 30 degrees, below freezing there in Soldier Field on that Monday night game. Dallas should have a full complement of players, but will the weather be a factor? Dallas being a dome team, what do you think?
I'm actually going to go with the Cowboys. I know Jerry Jones will try and blame Tony Romo for the cold weather. It's not his fault. But given the fact that the Bears really should have put away the Vikings and they didn't, they've had a lot of issues on defense due to injuries. And I think the Cowboys, while they struggled against the Raiders, when they did put it together, they looked like the well-oiled offensive machine that we've come to expect. So the Cowboys really fighting to win the NFC East. I think they get a big road win in Chicago, basing a lot of this on intuition. But at the end of the day, as nice as McCown's played, in a battle of quarterbacks, I'll still take Tony Romo.
And you know what? I hate to say it because I like to give Romo a hard time. I like to give the Cowboys and the Cowboys fans a hard time, but I'd like the Cowboys in this game also. The Cowboys, we talk about them, are they good enough to win a Super Bowl? Maybe not. In fact, they are not, but they are good enough to win a game like this. They'll beat the Chicago Bears on Monday night and keep the talk alive.
You're preaching to the choir when it comes to egging on Cowboys fans.
All right, so about time to check out here. So what do you think, Mr. Lardier? Any final words for everybody?
Here we are. We are down the stretch. We are in December. This is when it's going to get really interesting, and I, for one, can't wait. We got a lot of nice matchups this week, and hopefully the referees get the calls right. That's about all I can say.
That's true. And the matchup I'm going to be looking at is my number one team, the Miami Dolphins, in Pittsburgh, to play the Steelers, my number 2 team. So I'll be fragmented a little bit, but hopefully that'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, we'll just call that the Controversy Bowl. It seems whatever team you root for, controversy just follows you, right?
Exactly. So remember, everybody, on game days especially, follow Chris on Twitter at ChrisLSports. Read all his writings online, chrislsports.blogspot.com. You can follow me on Twitter at TheInsideSports. And remember, officialinsidesports.com is the hub for everything. So if you want to see any shows that archived, any writings, anything else, go there. There are links there and everything that'll take care of you. So for Mr. Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. We will see everybody next week on NFL Football Talk. Enjoy the weekend's games, and we'll be back.